Good afternoon, class. In today's video, what I'd like to do is to continue our theme of the ancient world and how we came up with the names of very different elements. In the last video, what I talked about was the three elements that made up basically our money. But in this one, what I'd like to do is to talk about the elements that compose all of the metals that we use even today. In fact, how we even get things, we transport things like liquids, especially water, will come from this. And as a bonus, you get a little extra story about why why one of these elements was used and known for a very long time in the ancient world. So here we go. We're going to start with tin. We've known about tin for thousands of years as well, and so we don't use T or Ti or Tin or any of those to name it, because that's the English name for it, just like lead. Instead, we get Sn, and where does that come from? That comes from the Latin word stannum, which means tin. So that's where we get that. That one's not as interesting as the next one, which is lead. Lead, you get a lot more interesting stories from this, and there's a reason for that. But let's go over the origin. You get Pb, which, again, lead has no P or B in it, but it comes from the Latin name for lead, which is plummum. So what is the story? Why is lead so important and so useful in the ancient world? And the story goes something like this. There's actually a few of them. The reason why lead was so well known was because not only was lead very heavy, and so it was very dense, and it could very easily sit on the ground and not move, which was very important if you wanted to do things like construct a waterway, especially in Rome. So what they used was they took lead, and they also found that lead was also malleable, so you could take a hammer and shape it into whatever you wanted. So it was a perfect system and a perfect element to be used to make the Roman aqueducts. And it would be used to funnel water from all across the Roman Empire to wherever you needed it to go. Mostly Rome, because that was where the concentration of power was. There was one other use for lead that I had learned about recently. I thought it was a very interesting story as well. The Romans also knew many things about lead, and the reason why, and unfortunately, one of the things they didn't know about lead was that it was actually very poisonous. But then again, back in the ancient world, when people died from all kinds of reasons, I guess lead poisoning really didn't seem to top anybody's list, especially when it could take possibly years for those symptoms to really manifest. Versus, now when we know what lead poisoning is and how terrible it is, we take more care to not have lead in our pipes. But this was the ancient world. So what they found out, and I don't really know how they found this out, but one of the things that the Romans, especially the Roman aristocrats, like to use was they would take a bunch of lead and they would shave it off into their wine, because what they found was that lead actually made their wine taste sweet. So they would use it as the first artificial sweetener. And I know for some of you, you may be watching this thinking, that sounds ridiculous. It's poisonous. To which I would say, you're right. And many, many Romans died from it. But they died from a lot of other things too. So for them, it was worth it. And for especially the rich, powerful, aristocratic Romans, that was one of the things that made life enjoyable for them. So, technology has progressed. We have done a lot to change the way that we live life, and mercifully, we don't have to worry about trying to get, willingly poison ourselves with lead to make our wine taste sweeter or our drinks taste sweeter. So fortunately, we're not at that point. I know we still have a lot of work to do in order to make sure that all of the lead is gone from all of our infrastructures, but we're working on it. So that concludes this video. Good luck on your studies, and we'll continue this next time.